Hey guys, if we reach 1,000 likes, we'll be giving out 2 of our new shirts. All you gotta do is click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. MOP, a show started in 2010, has grown to be a monumental marker in the internet. When furries pretty much went full-on mainstream, because that's what bronies really are at the end of the day. They're like diet furries. It's something that I get asked a lot as someone who's in the MLP community. Or at least someone who's a prolific or at least decent-sized figure in it. I get asked a lot, is MOP a good show? And I really can't give them an answer. You see, I've always given sarcastic answers of, no, it's an awful show, you should never watch it. But really, is MOP a good show? I kind of want to know. By my own markers, is MOP a good show? I want to break down the animation, writing, music, and see if MOP, objectively or as subjectively as we can possibly be, is a good show. I plan to do this with other series, but I figured, hey, let's start where my channel began, with ponies. One thing fans often hide behind as a reason as why they like the show is the animation. And I say hide behind because really breaking it down, the show doesn't actually have any better animation than any other show out there. In fact, it could be seen as downright lazy at times. But let's actually analyze it. It's one thing just to go ahead and say something's lazy or that it's mediocre, and it's another to actually give examples as to why. I want to start out with a specific scene that I think both highlights when the show gets it right and when it gets it wrong.
Come on, I'll introduce you.
Did you see that? The takeoff obviously had real power. We saw the shake the wind created, the ripples in the air. The camera pans in a sharp motion as if it's trying to track her, but even it can't keep up, adding even more of a feeling of her speed. The scene adds a sense of liveliness to it. It showed that they wanted to do something more with it. Why did they want to do something more with this specific scene? This is the only time you really see her have such a shockwave. In the sense of speed that we got here, it was just incredible. Never before have we seen this and never again will we. So what made them just want to do this? At first glance, this would seem like, does MOP just add stuff like this, just randomly throughout? Just random bursts of creativity. And yes, they do. But that's the problem. They're just random bursts of creativity. It's almost as if they have to wait for their bosses not to be looking over their shoulder to actually add an artistic flair to it. Because this little intro that I gave here is the only part that's really good, and even it has problems. All throughout this scene, we're met with bland, lifeless wing cycles, played over and over and over again, really draining the life from the scene when you see the same motion over and over. Not to mention the nonsensical notion of the horse being able to hover in place with such low pumping of her wings. Look, they're barely even moving, and yet we're supposed to believe she's hovering? Sure, I can go ahead and excuse that. Say, hey, it's magic. I mean, they're already talking horses in a mythical land, so I can suspend my disbelief that somehow she can flap this little and still maintain a hover. But the wings themselves are confusing, as they sometimes dip below the middle of her torso after being right above the shoulder blades. So even when I give them something, they have another more glaring and unexcusable error. This makes any hope of grasping the true anatomy difficult and starts to pull you out of any immersion that you might have had. The entire animation lacks a level of life to it, due to the fact that these images aren't given any way to display it. Look at this hummingbird, this magnificent masterpiece of nature. While it's hovering, you can see the wind that's clearly affecting the back feather in the area around it. While with Dash, nothing seems to be affected by her wings, as if they're not even doing anything. She bobs unnaturally in the air, only because the animators think that's what we expect her to do. But the speed at which she bobs slowly down and jutting up, it doesn't make sense with her wing beats. In fact, she'll float down for 2 frames despite it beginning on her upbeat, which could work except for the sharp spike that they do for the bobbing up, despite the wing pace always being the same. In fact, the only thing that's usually synced is the hair bobbing with the head movements, but once again, it's as if it's a clay object or some sort of thick blanket filled with fluff. It's normally unaffected by anything else other than sharp movements of the head. It once again lacks any form of life that could be given to an actually hand-drawn horse or more detailed model. And yes, even in more detailed fields, hair is one of the hardest things to animate and to simulate. And I understand the medium they are using has its limits. But if your reasoning for why you like the show is its great animation, then I kind of expect more. Heck, I would expect it to at least be able to time better, because even in the scene Starlight looks away from Rainbow taking off, it's before she even does so. Look, she just clearly looks away before she takes off. And there are tons of animation errors, from copy and paste the crowds to tail symbols being left in plain sight. And when the show does try to give more life into it, it just comes off as off-putting. It doesn't mesh well with the symmetrical world they've made, where everything is nice and uniformed, without the subtle imperfections that other forms of animation give you. There's a reason why lo-fi hip-hop is so popular. It's because the pops and glitches and artifacting is what lets us feel as though it's alive. Only machines can produce something that sounds and looks perfect, and when you see it or hear it, it sounds generic, canned, lifeless, because it's too good, because there are no cracks, because there are no imperfections, there's no differences from one model to the next, there are no slightly off drum hits. From pony to pony, the only thing that changes are their race and hair color. They are all the same bases at the same height. That's very little to distinguish them from one another, and it's almost a frighteningly high level of similarities between characters. A lot of the times I zone in on their base bodies, ignoring the rest, and realize it's like talking to a mirror that changed their color. I understand why most people say that they like the show for the animation. It's really because it's easier to do than explain to you simply like a show for little girls. It's an excuse I've used before, because it allows me to give a reason most people understand without having to sit there and explain why it really doesn't matter who the show is targeted to, anyone can watch it. I've often used the same line of thought when explaining to people what I do for a living. I'm a Let's Player, or I'm a reviewer. It's much easier to package myself in an ill-fitting box the majority of people understand than trying to explain something that they might not understand and then being faced with a higher chance of rejection. So I get it, but I simply can't agree that MOP has any kind of unique animation. Sure, I'm 100% certain that you can find little glimpses of talent here or there, or something that's a one-shot thing. But all throughout the show, it's normally pretty uniformed and standard. The writing aspect of the show is far more difficult to explain, but I'll do my best to try to convey my thoughts. I simply find the writing to be mediocre at best, unrealistic at worst. Oftentimes, the interaction between characters follow the same normal hammer-home dialogue pattern. There's nothing there in the plot or story that makes people think what may happen. Everything you expect to happen does. There are sometimes entire seasons without an overarching conflict, which can be okay, but they're trying to have one. Take for instance when the main six are trying to open the cutie mark box. This secret box is supposed to be the whole premise of the season, like this is the important puzzle piece here. But there's no conflict. In fact, for a majority of it, they forget about the box. Then there's seasons where the entire premise was supposed to be about exploring Equestria, but then they don't go anywhere new. In fact, I believe they only visited 2 new places, and the rest were places they've already been. It seems like the show wants to do more, but then realizes that if it can get away with the bare minimum, why do more? Almost as if the artists and writers would like to do something more, but then Hasbro comes down and tells them that they are still a company that needs to meet their bottom line, which is fine. That's their job. Without them saying that they need to meet their bottom line, this show probably wouldn't be produced. In fact, a lot of stuff wouldn't be produced, but I'm kinda getting off topic. Back to the episodes. Most of the times, you're able to discern the plot within the first few minutes. They also love to coat the world in absolutes and black and whites. Take for instance the episode of Parental Guidance. Rainbow Dash has a legitimate reason for being angry with her parents. They're overbearing, they're interrupting her work, and they're belittling her teammates. Their smotheringly affectionate personalities actively hamper her ability to perform her job. She even states as much, and that she does love them very much, but she can't deal with the attention. Her snapping at them obviously was the wrong way to go about it, but the show simply painted Rainbow as being in the wrong, as if it was all simply her fault. But aside from the ham-fisted morals and stale dialogue, there are simply too many plot holes to call the writing consistent or good. Even with the same episode of parental guidance, Rainbow's parents are explained as not being seen before because she somehow kept them in the dark about her becoming a Wonderbolt, and all those other times when she became a national hero. But even then, Rainbow's mom talks about the Rainbow Dash Saves Ponyville headlines, showing she is aware of all those events and simply chose to never show up, despite smothering Dash with attention at every opportunity. This is a trend that continues all throughout the show. All of this could, in a sense, be excused if it wasn't for the main thing of teaching morals that was so poorly handled. This show removes consequence from the equation. Oftentimes, people simply are forgiven with very little more than a slap on the wrist. Actions that endanger billions are seen as completely forgivable without any kind of punishment. It teaches you that all the world's problems can be solved by being friends, and it simply is not how the world works. It's showing you that as long as you say sorry, everything will be okay. That deep, complex psychological damage is undone overnight, and that it's not a constant fight. They also show a clear bias as certain villains are reformed and others are sentenced to internal imprisonment, and the lucky ones, like Sombra, are simply killed. The morals of the show tries to teach you aren't bad, but aren't revolutionary either, especially not in their execution. It's a standard do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and just because someone's different, you should accept them for who they are. Unless they're a changeling, then they have to change to be more like you to be accepted and seen as good people. But the irony of promoting not being racist but inadvertently being racist aside, the same lessons are learned over and over again, like Applejack learning how not to be honest to a fault. And lastly, the music. Boy, the music is either hit or miss, and when they hit, it's out of the park. But when they miss, it's a bland, cookie-cutter, forgettable piece that anyone could have hammered out. Look, I'm not like my friend Sheldon. I don't have a music degree. Well, I actually got a useful one. But even I can tell that they're using the same 3 chords as everyone else. But then, they also do make an attempt to branch out and do other genres, like hip-hop or country. Of course, they have plenty of pop and rock and all kinds of 2010 type pop. The music is so complex because it's one that's inherently subjective. Is it new? Well, I guess not necessarily. But is it good for the standards the cartoons often have? Yes. However, that's changing. Shows like Steven Universe has shown us that they can have the full package. Good writing, decent animation, and amazing songs that resonate with the community. I know the third part of this was pretty short, but honestly, I can't really say that I'm disappointed musically. Equestria Girls has had some of the best songs. In fact, the Rainbow Rocks album sounded like it could have been an actual album, something that I would have bought from a real artist. It felt like incredible love and care was put into that. And then Friendship Games, well, there was a lot of tracks that just felt the same. And then Camp Everfree, I can't even tell you a single song from it. So what does all of this really mean? Does this mean that MLP is a bad show? Well, by a lot of objective markers, it's not a bad show, but a mediocre show. A show that should do everything we expect a show to do, to have at least competent animation as to where we understand what is being portrayed on the screen, to have decent music that isn't abhorrent, to have decent writing that we at least understand what the episode is trying to do. Now, MLP has sometimes lacked in some regards with the episode plots in which it sometimes gets muddled and sometimes it drags on too long or sometimes it's just really rushed. But for the majority of episodes, it's run-of-the-mill. It's pretty just normal. So it's not that MLP is a bad show. It's just that they're a normal show that came out during a time when shows were lackluster and mediocre at best. And because of that, I guess we kind of have grown a fondness for it, and we overlook a lot of the bad that it has. And we usually don't try to press the show creators to create anything better, even though we know the show creators are completely capable of doing better. It's a show at the end of the day to sell toys to little girls, and that's what they'll mainly focus on. To expect anything more is, well, kind of dumb on us. MLP can't be considered a bad show because it's doing exactly what it's been doing and what it set out to do. But I can't really say that it's a good show, even though I love it and I do tune in a lot. Do I tune in just to watch it out of habit? I don't really think so. There's a couple of shows that I watch and a couple of shows that I just wait every Saturday to see. In fact, there's a few episodes of MLP that have had me watching it early, even though I usually tend not to. But that's what I've come to. MLP is neither a good or bad show, but it's simply a show. Nothing less and nothing really more. There are a few gems that you'll find here and there, but it's overall just average. And if you like the show, and if you consider it to be your favorite show, that's not to say that you're wrong to do so. Sometimes average can be good. Sometimes it's a much needed stable source of entertainment in someone's life. Sometimes they just want something that they can rely on to always be the same in a world that's ever changing, where information is constantly being thrown at them and contradictory facts are always being globbed at them. So, who knows? There's a lot of reasons why you should like MLP, and there's a lot of reasons why you could hate it. But this is just my opinion, and I'm looking forward to reading some of yours. Let me know if you guys enjoyed, and the next few of these series will probably be a lot more upbeat. It's just I've been kind of sick all week, so recording this and writing it were two very different tasks. As always, guys, it's been Faith to Moliminous. Peace to them out, guys. I'll see you next time.